Masechet Zivach Menahot Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, 7 lines down. Last time we mentioned it seemingly implied that Rabbi Shimon holds that a minha can't be compared to a korban with an animal, and therefore seemingly would say that an animal korban can't be damaged by an intention for the wrong sake. Gemara says Koche Kochim Shaitan was a fun Sim Koche Kalim. Say Koche Kochim is slaughtered in the north part of the Hatzer for the sake of a kalim. L'rasu, it should work as kapara. Ma'aseim Ochichem Lend the Koche Kochim, because since they're doing it in the north, it's proven that it's the Koche Kochim. The Koche Kalim, because it was a kalim. But Pedrom Abed Yichud in the south. The Gemara says more than Amrach Na'af Pedrom. Say Simeon is easy. Kalim can be slaughtered also in the south. Pedrom V'lo B'Safon Myanmar, but it doesn't mean you can't do in the north. The time Mishnah says Shaitan B'Chom Akum Nazra, you could slaughter kalim anywhere in Nazra. Therefore, by the fact that you did it in the north, does that mean anything? It's not a proof that it's kashim. I think that was stored in the south for the sake of kachim should work. Yeah, because it proved that it's kalim. It's not that because he did it was kachim, it would have been done in the north. So where it says, many people would say kachim, it was kachim, but he just went against halakha and did it in the south. So it's not a proof. The Gemara says, yeah, if that's the case, so regarding the menahaz, how to come amar. Person who's seeing the guy do the kimitzah for the sake of a marheshet, even though it's supposed to be mahbat. Guy just messed up. And that's the concept, right? Until now we said if you're doing A instead of B, but it's the way you're supposed to do B, then even though you're doing A, it's not a proof because we can see that you're doing B. But over here, we just gave the different new type of answer saying, yeah, but it's not a big deal because you could just say that the guy's doing it for the other A, but he just messed up and did it towards B. So now we're saying that whole idea falls apart. And anything that we could say that the Gemara says no. Hatam by the case of minha, ki not nadar. Even if he did do a minha with the marheshet, ki ma'ti lab mahbad. When he's doing a mahbad, mahbad have becomes a minha of mahbad. The Tam Mishnah says, someone says, I want to bring a neder ba mincha and a mahbad. Then marheshet, then bring marheshet, or vice versa. Marheshet be mahbad. Mashi heavy, whatever he already brought, they did not fulfill his vow, and therefore it's basically just he just added a new korban that he had to bring, but he still has to bring a new one of what he initially did. Maybe he said in the valley also bring this flower as a maheshet minha, and therefore, if that's the case, the minha cannot become a new minha if he did it in a mahbat. Right? The different terminology. The owner said this flower is supposed to be mahbat, or vice versa, so why does Rishon one say that the actions prove nothing? Seemingly it can. Gemara says that a banana hachanami. Ator Chamim, yes. No, bro. The Rishon I work on the Jimon. Came in the matter of Rishon. After he didn't address it, according to Rishon, in that case, where even the vow was considered fulfilled, Alma kivu atad manav lo kum. Must be that the designation verbally of a kli does nothing. Loshna amar zub, loshna amar lai, doesn't make a difference how he worded it. According to him, it still means nothing. And if that's the case, that saying something false, obviously false, would not affect the korban. Allah sheshahat l'shem hatat tiratzeh. Allah that he did for hatat should get kapara. The high zachar nekeva because Allah is zachar and the hatat nekeva. When it says given the ikas nasi, the zachar who lo nidia. We say okay fine, but you know what? It's not necessarily true because there is a nasi, there is a hatat that's male. The nasi is goats, therefore it's not automatic. The one said amar l'shem hatat ha'achim ma'iklam. Let's say he's doing for private hatat, definitely not for the nasi, not for the king. Two, even a private hatat for the Allah should good kapara, because now it's the opposite case. It's private hatat, which is female, and Allah will be male. Gemara says mikasya ba'alya. True, technically yes, but the problem is the organ of the animal might be blocked by its tail, so you can't tell. The Gemara says that makes sense where he brought a female lamb. It has a tail, so you can't tell the genitalia. I can see that Mike he brought a she goat, which does not have a tail, though you can't tell. You know what? Fine, granted. But the problem is people don't always tell right away what the nature of the gender. Right? Most people cannot tell genders off the bat of an animal. A Pesach slaughtered for an Hashem should get kaparat zahai b'shna v'hai b'shnayim. The Pesach's 1 year old and the Hashem's 2 year old. The Gemara says no. Kevin the Ika Hashem Nazir Hashem Musra. Since there's different types of Hashems, the Nazir or the Mesvarah, which are also 1 year old. Lopsikle, then it's not for sure that it's false. Okay, I'm Hashem Hashem is love, Hashem is love, Michael Mimar. Okay, fine. What if he specifically says I'm doing it for a certain type of korbanot that's not Hashem of Mitzvah or Nazir? Then for sure it should work. But two, additionally, Hashem's love, Hashem Eilot B'Shatan Hashem Pesach too. And Hashem for stealing or Hashem for Milah that was slaughtered for Pesach should get put out. Pesach Hashem Pesach's 1 year and other two year olds. Seemingly, since it's obviously false, again, should work, even though it's wrong. The Gemara says, again, similar answers to the gender. A 1 year old animal, 2 year animal is not so apparent to people. Like, since the 1 year old animal like a 2 year old, like 2 year old animal also like 1 year old. Like me, my height, you can't tell the difference between myself or my students. It's not funny, don't laugh. A goat that is slaughtered for the sake of an Asham, shekek kapara. The high similar to Haiser because the Asham is a sheep with wool and the goat has the hair. Where it says, Amrei dechra uchmahum. People think that it's a black ram. Okay, a calf or a bull that's slaughtered for Pesach, or an Asham should get kapara. The Eigel par Pesach Hashem Leka. So the interesting is a calf or a bull for Pesach or an Asham. Where it says, Enachnami, it's true. In that case, since it's so obvious, it's so blatantly obvious, it would not work. So why did he say Zvachim? Seemingly all Zvachim? The answer is not all, but all Zvachim. Most animals, but there are exceptions. Avam different answer. In the case where Rabbi Shimon said that the mincha is kasher, it's on a case where he did the kimitza for mincha for another mincha. In the case where Pasul where he did it mincha for kimitza for a korban animal. Mincha for another animal, it's kasher because v'zot tzura mincha tzura halachot minchot one halachot for all. Mincha for animal, zot mincha mincha not animal. Our Mishnah seemingly says that the fact that we mentioned that the structure or the words prove it, seemingly, even a mincha for an animal should work because obviously it's not. This is not a korban mincha. Where it says hachi kamar means as follows: even though technically this is intentions that cannot be technically true. That's why the pasuk mentions as well. Torah achat l'chol minchat, the mincha halachot apply to all. But what the exclusion regarding animal? That is, even there's one shechita slaughtering for all animals. It doesn't mention the animals at all. And therefore, even though there's only one type of shechita for animals, the same halachot does not apply to all. And it still won't count as the obligation. Umar says, that's the case. That I mentioned is the law. Hatat halib shechtal Hashem hatat lam. Let's say a hatat for halib. They slaughtered for the sake of hatat for blood. The shum hatat halib or for avodah zarah. The shum hatat nazir or for nazir. Hatat. The shum hatat mitzvah for mitzvah. To say should work and be get kapara. The Merchant Torah says hatat Torah hatat seemingly all should work. Same lashon. Gemara says the Rabbi Shimon HaChanami is true. The Rabbi Shimon HaChanami Hamarava hatat halib shechtal Hashem hatat am shum hatat avodah kravim was for eating chalib that was slaughtered for blood or avodah zarah kashiras kasher. Hashem hatat nazir for nazir. Hashem hatat mitzvah or mitzvah pasul pasul. The hani alot b'dalaninu because these have alot brought with it, and therefore, even though you're bringing olah for hatat, people might think that it's the accompanying olah, and therefore it's not for sure the wrong korban. Okay, Rav Acha said all those cases of hatat pasul, even Korban Chamim. Why? Because Pasuk says you slaughtered for hatat. The Shem hatat has been slaughtered for that hatat and not for any other reason. Rashi says lakasha, also not a different explanation from Rishimon. What's his answer? He says, "Kam bekometz min havat l'shum marcheshet." When's the kasher? When you did the mahavat for marcheshet. Kam bekometz min havat mahavat l'shum min hat marcheshet. The kasher also where you did the marcheshet for mahavat. Mahvat mishum marcheshet, but what if he did kimitza on the mahvat for the sake of marcheshet without calling it minhat marcheshet, the manaka mahashev, and therefore what's setting the precedent is the actual vessel. Umahasheva b'mana lo baslan, therefore it's not like pasul. Minhat mahvat ushum minhat marcheshet, vice versa. Minhat baslan mahashev, and the intention can make it pasul because he wasn't designated. You're saying it has to do with intention. Our Mishnah specifically mentioned that the action does the thing, not the intention. The Gemara says, Hachi Gemara as follows. Afagav mashavad lo minkari, even though this is not a discernible intention, tipasel es lepasul. What's the exclusion by korbanot? Afagav l'shkita had plan, even though korbanot has one type of slaughtering for all, the ka had plan, or all types of sprinkling for all, kabla had plan, blood is receiving blood for all, bezvichat pasla b'hashva kama hashev, since he's intending it for the sake of animal korban, that is a intention that makes it pasul. Billah. In the case where a guy's offering a dry korban mincha for the sake of a mixed one with oil, which is wet. Why over there Rabbi Shimon say it's kasher? Seemingly impossible. One's dry, one's wet. Can't be one for the other. It's obviously false. The shum bila ba'alma. He says no, for the sake of a mixture, not necessarily for the sake of a mincha oil mixture. Yeah, it's the case. The shum mishlamim nami. So that's the case. Why doesn't it work for Ashlamim? Guy who offers it Allah Shlamim should work. Mishum mishlamim ba'alma, because maybe it'll work for peace, not for Shlamim. Playing on words. Where it says, actually, you can't compare. Because why? You can't say Shlamim means peace, because the Korban is called Shlamim as well. You see, the Makriv is the Dama Shlamim. Hazurek Dama Shlamim. But over here, the Minhaj itself doesn't have the name called mixed. It just says mixed with oil. Without is not called without oil is not called mixed, and therefore when he says mixed, it doesn't have to mean the mincha. Okay, Klal Rabba Lamre. Ravashi and Rabba argue against Rabba, who said that the machoket is the difference between a change of korban versus change of ownership. The Ad Rabba, he doesn't hold that. Because logically, the Torah would say that the intention that's obvious would be pasul. Okay, Rabba lo Amre, they don't like Rabba and Ravashi because they don't learn that Drashav Zot Torah. Because the question Rav Aha had earlier, he said, why would that work? He brought the question from the case of the oil hatat. Okay. Something that's obvious to Rabba, meaning the case of the obviously false intention, makes it pasul, but it's not obviously false. Sorry, non-obviously false makes it pasul, but obviously false makes it keeps it kosher. So it was a question of Roshia. The Roshia is the question. Minha the shum zebach. That's the guy that did minha for the sake of a korban animal. Mali amar bishum or bishum hold. Maybe bishum hold the intentions that you could tell to be false. It's not like so why? This is obvious. Although maybe not. Maybe the emphasis is it has to do with the fact that it's a minha. Doesn't apply to a korban. Therefore, the minha for the korban should be pasul. Amalei says to him, "Kulam higanu l'sot Rabbi Shimon." He says, "Well, you know exactly what Rabbi Shimon held. We had questions what Rabbi Shimon held. Yani, we don't know." He says, "Okay, fine. Why we not accept the previous answers? Because he says, I don't like a Rabba. Mishum kushtabeh, because Rabbi has a question earlier that ownership change intention would not make a difference versus holiness because of the hekesh." They didn't like Rabba's answer. Mishum kusha because of the question of the fact that you brought proof from Zot Torat HaMinha. Problem is we have the same lashon by hatat, and we know that doesn't apply. Ravashi didn't like Ravashi's answer. Mishum kusha Rabba because of that question that was mentioned previously regarding the dry oil. That's why he didn't know what Rabbi Shimon would hold in the case of a minha that was offered for an animal.